Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying the words of the Buddha. We're in volume 13 of our book series, which is titled Generosity. We're going to be exploring chapters 31 through 40 today. And the way that we do this program is a bit different than we do all of our other programs, where what we do is we study the words of the Buddha as a study group, where typically I'm teaching in a more traditional method, where I'm teaching for 15, 20, 30 minutes and then opening up for questions, or teaching another 15, 20, 30 minutes, opening up for questions. Or what I do here is I invite students in Zoom to be able to read a chapter. And then after someone reads a chapter, I'm going to share some teachings on that. And then I open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to the path to enlightenment and what I've shared here in terms of the words of the Buddha. You can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like by unmuting your microphone. So is there anyone in Zoom who would like to read this first chapter? Okay, looks like Vibhav. Go ahead, sir.
8 kinds of rebirth on account of giving. Monks, there are these 8 kinds of rebirth on account of giving. What 8? 1. Here, someone gives a gift to an ascetic or a Brahmin: food and drink, clothing and vehicles, garlands, scents and ointments, bedding, dwellings and lighting. Whatever he gives, he expects something in return. He sees affluent Khatiyas, affluent Brahmins, or affluent householders enjoying themselves, furnished and endowed with the 5 objects of sensual pleasure. It occurs to him, oh, with the breakup of the body, after that, may I be reborn in companionship with affluent Khatiyas, affluent Brahmins, or affluent householders. He sets his mind on this, fixes his mind on this, and develops this state of mind. That objective of his, determined on what is inferior, not developed higher, leads to rebirth there. With the breakup of the body, after death, he is reborn in companionship with the affluent Khatiyas, affluent Brahmins, or affluent householders. And that is for one who is virtuous, practices moral conduct, I say, not for one who is immoral. The heart's objective of one who is virtuous succeeds because of his purity. 2. Someone else gives a gift to an ascetic or a Brahmin: food and drink and lighting. Whatever he gives, he expects something in return. He has heard the heavenly being ruled by the 4 great kings are long-lived, beautiful, and abound in happiness. It occurs to him, oh, with the breakup of the body, after that, may I be reborn in companionship with the heavenly being ruled by the 4 great kings. He sets his mind on this, fixes his mind on this, and develops this state of mind. That objective of his, determined on what is inferior, not developed higher, leads to rebirth there. With the breakup of the body, after death, he is reborn in companionship with the heavenly beings, ruled by the 4 great kings. And that is for one who is virtuous, practices moral conduct, I say, not for one who is immoral. The heart's objective is for one who is virtuous, succeeds because of this purity. 3. Someone else gives a gift to an ascetic or Brahmin: food and drink and lighting. Whatever he gives, he expects something in return. He has heard the Tavatimsa heavenly beings, the Yama heavenly beings, the Tusita heavenly beings, the heavenly beings who excite in creation, the heavenly beings who control what is created by others are long-lived, beautiful, and abound in happiness. It occurs to him, oh, with the breakup of the body, after death, may I be reborn in companionship with the heavenly beings who control what is created by others. He sets his mind on this, fixes his mind on this, and develops a state of mind. That objective of his, determined on what is inferior, not developed higher, leads to rebirth there. With the breakup of the body, after death, he is reborn in companionship with the heavenly beings who control what is created by others. And that is for one who is virtuous, practices moral conduct, I say, not for one who is immoral. The heart's objective of one who is virtuous succeeds because of this purity. 8. Someone who else gives a gift to an ascetic or a Brahmin: food and drink and lighting. Whatever he gives, he expects something in return. He has heard the heavenly beings of Brahma's God's company are long-lived, beautiful, and abound in happiness. It occurs to him, oh, with the breakup of the body after death, may I be reborn in companionship with the heavenly beings of Brahma's God's company. He sets his mind on this, fixes his mind on this, and develops a state of mind. That objective of his, determined on what is inferior, not developed higher, leads to rebirths there. With the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in companionship with the heavenly beings of Brahma's God's company. And that is for one who is virtuous, practicing moral conduct, I say, not for one who is immoral. For one without craving, not for one with craving. The heart's objective of one whose virtue succeeds because of his purity. These months are the 8 kind of rebirth on account of giving.
Okay, thank you, Vibhav. So, as I've guided you guys in the past, is whenever you're seeing the Buddha talk about all this rebirth, of course, you're not interested in rebirth. You're interested in getting to enlightenment now in this life. But the same things that lead to enlightenment are the same things that if you fall short of that, it's going to lead to an improved rebirth. So when the Buddha is talking about this rebirth, whether it's in the human realm or the heavenly realm or anything like this, you can always see the things that you need to practice in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment, even though he's talking about rebirth, because you're not interested in rebirth. So you can look at the things that are being described here and be able to glean information for you and what to practice. So because there is rebirth in all of these examples that he's given, you know that the individual, the being, is not enlightened, or else there wouldn't be rebirth to begin with. So it's very clear here that the person does have pollution in the mind, because when they're practicing generosity, they're giving with expectation, right? That's the craving, desire, attachment. They're still clinging. It's not pure generosity yet. So this is the whole reason why there's rebirth to begin with, because they're still craving in the mind. And then the Buddha is talking about some other things here, but ultimately what he gets to down here in each one of these, he talks about virtuous moral conduct, right? We know that that's important to be able to make your way to enlightenment, is improve your moral conduct, because as you're improving your moral conduct, that's what's affecting the pollution in the mind. It's not that someone's overlooking your moral conduct and then deciding that you go to a good place or a bad place. Instead, what you're doing in terms of your moral conduct is an indicator of what's going on in the mind in terms of the pollution of the mind. So if an individual has cleaned up their moral conduct to a certain degree, then that means they've cleaned up a certain amount of pollutions in their mind. So the Buddha is talking here about this rebirth in the heavenly realm because the individual has made their way to improved moral conduct. They're not immoral. So these are the two main things that you can gain out of this type of discourse, where the Buddha is talking about all these different types of rebirths and where this individual will be reborn and all these other things. Okay, that's fine. That's interesting information to know, but that's not going to help you eliminate discontentedness today. And that's not going to help you to be able to get to enlightenment today. Instead, what you would like to be able to do is sometimes pick apart a discourse like this, and a lot of this rebirth stuff, you can just take it in as information just to understand that that's the way it's happening, but then really focus on what can I be doing in terms of what is this discourse exposed to me that I can now improve my practice. And when he's talking about rebirth to the heavenly realm, you're usually looking at things that are wholesome and beneficial, like this improved moral conduct. And when he's talking about things that are being reborn, that are causing the rebirth to a lower realm like hell, animal realm, or afflicted spirits, you know that you're not interested in doing those types of things. So you can glean this type of information from discourses where he's talking about rebirth. So here, understanding that generosity is not true generosity when someone is expecting something in return, that means they're still craving there. And of course, this individual would experience rebirth. And you would like to improve your moral conduct, which are things that you guys have learned at other times. You don't really need this whole discourse to be able to understand that. But because you will see different discourses that are describing rebirth, this is a great example of how you can kind of pick it apart and see what's going to really benefit you today. So let me know if you guys have any questions on this discourse. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So now we'll go to chapter 32. Would somebody like to read this one? Okay, looks like Pat. Go ahead, sir.
Even more fruitful than giving. If, householder, one gives alms, rough or excellent, and one gives disrespectfully, gives inconsiderately, does not give with one's own hand, gives what would be discarded, gives without a view of future consequences, then whenever the result of that gift is produced for one, one's mind is not inclined toward the enjoyment of superb food, nor toward the enjoyment of superb clothing, nor toward the enjoyment of superb vehicles, nor toward the enjoyment of whatever is superb among the five objects of sensual pleasure. Also, one's children and wives, and one's slaves, servants, and workers do not want to listen to one, do not lend an ear, and do not apply their minds to understand. For what reason? Just this is the result actions that are done disrespectfully. If, householder, one gives alms, whether rough or excellent, and one gives respectfully, gives considerately, gives with one's own hand, gives what would not be discarded, gives with the view of future consequences, then wherever the result of that gift is produced for one, one's mind inclines toward the enjoyment of superb food, toward the enjoyment of superb clothing, toward the enjoyment of superb vehicles, toward the enjoyments of whatever is superb among the five objects of sensual pleasure. Also, one's children and wives, and one's slaves, servants, and workers want to listen to one, lend an ear, and apply their minds to understand. For what reason? Just this is the result of actions that are done respectfully.
Pat, can I pause you? Can I pause you here for a second?
Sure.
Okay, sorry about that. I didn't give you a heads up before you started reading, but this discourse has kind of two sections to it, which are really helpful to break down. This part up here, what the Buddha is describing is that when an individual gives a gift and it's being done disrespectfully, which he gives kind of parameters of that this individual is not giving with their own hand, meaning that they're telling somebody else to do it for them, or that they're giving things that would otherwise be discarded. And it's not like a true, real item that would be of necessarily value, that it's just like, oh, I'm going to discard it anyway. So why don't I just give it to this person, right? And the individual doesn't give with understanding of future consequences, meaning they don't understand how it's going to enhance the quality of their mind, right? Then whenever the result of that gift is produced for one's mind is not inclined towards the enjoyment of these types of things. So basically, because they're not practicing pure generosity in the way that would be beneficial, they're not actually experiencing the true results of the generosity. And as a consequence of that, in addition, that this person, the people that are around them, whether it's their children, their life partner, or their employees, they're not very influenced by this person, that they don't really listen to this person. They don't really give ear to this person. They don't apply their minds to understand what this person has to share. So if you go around being disrespectful to people in the way that you're practicing generosity, then the people around you would see that. Your children, your wife, or your life partner, or your employees. And now, because of that, the result of that action is that because an individual has been practicing generosity in a disrespectful way, this is what one is going to experience, these types of things. But then conversely, if one gives respectfully and they understand how to practice generosity in the way that the Buddha taught, now their mind is going to experience the natural law of karma in terms of these benefits, not because they want these things or that's what their goal is, but because they're practicing pure generosity, that one is giving respectfully, that they're giving considerately, they give with their own hand, they give not what would be discarded. They actually go out and maybe purchase things for this particular gift. They understand the future consequences of their practice of generosity. They understand it's to enhance the quality of their mind. And now there's these benefits that the Buddha is describing here, but then also because one is being respectful in their generosity in the way that they practice generosity, now their children, life partner, and employees, they are interested in listening to this person because they know that they're wise. This is the cause and effect of having practiced their generosity either with disrespect or with respect. And now we can go on and see the rest of this discourse where the Buddha talks about some other things here. So if you'd like to pick it up there, Pat, you're more than welcome to.
Sure. In the past, householder, there was a Brahmin named Valama. He gave such a great alms offering as this: 84,000 golden bowls filled with silver, 84,000 bowls filled with gold, 84,000 bronze bowls filled with bullion, 84,000 elephants with golden ornaments, golden banners covered with nets of gold thread, 84,000 chariots with upholstery of lion skins, tiger skins, leopard skins, and saffron-dyed blankets with golden ornaments, golden banners covered with nets of gold thread. 84,000 milk cows with jute tethers and bronze pails. 84,000 maidens adorned with jeweled earrings. 84,000 couches spread with rugs, blankets, and covers, with excellent coverings of antelope hide, with canopies and red bolsters at both ends. 84,000 coatis of cloth made of fine linen, fine silk, fine wool, and fine cotton. How much more of food and drink, snacks, meals, refreshments, and beverages? It seemed to be flowing like rivers. You might think, householder, he was someone else, the Brahman Valama, who on that occasion gave that great alms offering. But you should not look at it in such a way. I myself was the Brahma Valama, who on that occasion gave that great alms offering. Now, householder, at that alms offering, there was no one worthy of offerings, no one who purified the offering. Even more fruitful than the great alms offering that the Brahman Valama gave would it be to feed one person accomplished in view. Even more fruitful than the great alms offering that the Brahman Valama gave and feeding 100 persons accomplished in view would it be to feed one once returner. Even more fruitful than the great alms offering that the Brahman Valama gave and feeding 100 once returners would it be to feed one non-returner. Even more fruitful than the great alms offering that the Brahman Valama gave and feeding 100 non-returners would it be to feed one arahant. Even more fruitful than the great alms offering that the Brahman Valama gave and feeding 100 arahants would it be to feed one Paka Buddha. How do you say Paka Buddha?
I've heard it pronounced in different ways.
Okay. Even more fruitful than the great alms offering that the Brahman Valama gave and feeding 100 Aseka Buddhas would it be to feed the Tathagata, the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one? Would it be to feed the community of monks headed by the Buddha? Would it be to build a dwelling dedicated to the community of the four quarters? Would it be for one with a mind of confidence to go for refuge to the Buddha, the teachings, and the community? Would it be for one with a mind of confidence to undertake the 5 training precepts, to abstain from the destruction of life, to abstain from taking what is not given, to abstain from sexual misconduct, to abstain from false speech, to abstain from liquor, wine, and intoxicants, the basis for heedlessness? As great as this might be, it would be even more fruitful if one would develop a mind of loving kindness, even for the time it takes to pull a cow's udder. As great as all this might be, it would be even more fruitful if one would develop the perception of impermanence just for the time of a finger snap. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. Okay, so we talked about the first part, and now the second part is this individual who's giving this enormous offering in the past. I mean, just an enormous, enormous offering, right? This Brahmin, this Hindu priest. And ultimately what the Buddha describes is that there was no one there that was able to purify the offering, meaning that there wasn't anyone there that was well practiced in the teachings in order to be able to purify the offering, because there would need to be someone who was free of craving, anger, and ignorance, meaning they're enlightened, or practicing for the removal of craving, anger, and ignorance. So there was no one at that occasion that was able to actually purify the offering. And he's saying that this was actually him who made this offering in a previous life. So now he's saying out of this enormous, enormous offering that one might give, right, this very expensive offering, it would actually be better to just feed one person who's accomplished in view. And this would essentially be someone who is in the first stage of enlightenment. So if somebody gave this enormous offering, that would be an extensive amount of stuff. But here it's just feeding one person, right? So this is where I've shared with you guys, it's not about the amount that you give, it's about the frequency. And also here you can see the Buddha's talking about it's about who you come in contact with to be able to make the offering. Because what makes this offering of feeding one person accomplished in view beneficial is that this person has wisdom that now you can talk to them about how did you establish accomplishment in view? How did you get to that point, right? You can cultivate wisdom that's going to help you in your journey. And now the Buddha goes a step further. He says, okay, if you fed 100 persons accomplished in view, that wouldn't be nearly as beneficial if you just feed one person who's a once returner, someone who's in the second stage of enlightenment. Again, there's a lot more food that's being offered to the 100 people who are accomplished in view, but now there's just this one meal that's given to this once returner, and that's more beneficial because you're coming in contact with someone who's in the second stage of enlightenment, and now you can experience the ability to cultivate wisdom to understand how to get to the second stage of enlightenment. So the Buddha goes through each one of these. As you guys probably know, there's the second stage of enlightenment that he's talking about, then the third stage, right? That would be a better situation. Then ultimately, he talks about an arahant, which would be an individual who's actually enlightened, right? Like that would be better than making an offering to someone who doesn't have as much wisdom. Then he talks about, I pronounce this as a Pakya Buddha, but I've heard many people pronounce it many different ways. What this type of individual is someone who's gotten to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or guides, but they don't share their teachings. They don't help other people to get to enlightenment. They just get to enlightenment themselves, and that's it. And they don't share their teachings with others. I've never met this type of person, but they must exist, or else the Buddha wouldn't have taught about this. But then ultimately he's saying, you could feed 100 of those types of people versus one person who's an actual Buddha, right? A Tathagata, one who discovers the truth, one who discerns the truth, one who shares the truth. That's what the word Tathagata means. That's him, right? But then it would be more advantageous to feed the entire community headed by the Buddha, right? Because now you're getting all this wisdom, and then to build a building dedicated to the community. And he goes on and explains all these different things. He talks about people who are practicing the 5 precepts, but then ultimately he gets to these 2 things. This is the whole real crux of this discourse, is that remember that 84,000 bowls of gold and 84,000 bowls of silver and all this kind of stuff. He says that pales in comparison to you just cultivating the mind with loving kindness meditation and developing the perception of impermanence, which you would do through breathing mindfulness meditation, right? This is the ultimate benefit for you, that yes, you need to practice generosity, and that's an important part of your practice. But what's really important is that you're eliminating these pollutions through active, dedicated training through things like loving kindness meditation and breathing mindfulness meditation. Sure, you need to do these other things too, like practicing generosity, but it's not about the amount that you're offering, this enormous amount of monetarily valuable offerings. It's about making sure that you're focused on the training of the mind. So loving kindness meditation is the second highest quality of wholesome karma that you could ever generate, because it's helping you to eliminate your anger, hatred, and ill will, and all those lesser versions. And when you're eliminating that, you're not out in the world making unwise decisions through that anger, hatred, and ill will. Because when you're making decisions through that anger, hatred, and ill will, you're going to be damaging a lot of relationships. And now that's all going to come back to you. So if you're focused on loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in your day-to-day life through your intentions, speech, and actions, that's highly beneficial for you, more so than practicing generosity. And then the same thing is true about breathing mindfulness meditation. That's the highest quality of wholesome karma that you could ever generate, because that's knocking down your craving, desire, attachment. So is generosity too. But the breathing mindfulness meditation is doing it in a more direct way through training of the mind. And now you're developing this perception of impermanence, understanding the world around you is impermanent. Your thoughts, your ideas, the emotions, the feelings, all these things are impermanent, because remember, the mind is craving permanence. So if you develop this perception of impermanence in the mind and you train your mind to knock down craving, desire, attachment, that's going to help you automatically eliminate your anger. And of course, you need loving kindness to go in and eliminate the anger, but just working on the craving, desire, attachment, it's going to help you eliminate some of the anger and all the other discontent feelings too. So these are the 2 highest quality of wholesome Dhamma that you could generate, even more so than practicing generosity. But you still need to practice generosity, but these are two really high priorities on your list. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Vibhav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Could you just please go to the top of the discourse? Yes, one thing he said here is that we should not be giving, or if we give things that would be discarded, then would not have the same benefit. So I mean, it's like, so if you have clothes or like shoes or something that you're say giving to Salvation Army because you're not using them anymore, so that is that what this means?
Yeah, this doesn't have as much benefit, because if that was all you were giving, right? Because you're going to balance your giving, right? You might give some of those things. It's not that you should never give those things. It's that if you're giving things that you would discard anyway, the mind has already eliminated its attachment to it. So giving it away, sure, you're giving it away, and that's fine. That is generosity. But ultimately, you would like to get to the point where you're practicing generosity of other things too, not just things that you would discard.
Okay, thank you.
Let me see if we have any other questions. Okay. All right, so let's go to the next one, which is chapter 33. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, Yihang, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. The 8 streams of merit. Monks, there are these 8 streams of merit, streams of the wholesome nutriments of peacefulness, heavenly ripening in peacefulness, conducive that lead to what is aspired for, needed, and to heaven agreeable, to one's welfare and peacefulness. What 8? Here, a noble disciple has gone for refuge to the Buddha. This is the first stream of merit, stream of the wholesome nutriment of peacefulness, heavenly ripening in peacefulness, conducive to heaven, that leads to what is aspired for, needed and agreeable to one's welfare and peacefulness. Again, a noble disciple has gone for refuge to the teachings. This is the second stream of merit, stream of the wholesome nutriment of peacefulness, heavenly ripening in peacefulness, conducive to heaven, that leads to what is aspired for, needed and agreeable to one's welfare and peacefulness. Again, a noble disciple has gone for refuge to the community. This is the third stream of merit, stream of the wholesome nutriment of peacefulness, heavenly ripening in peacefulness, conducive to heaven, that leads to what is aspired for, needed and agreeable to one's welfare and peacefulness. There are amongst these 5 gifts, great gifts, highest of long-standing traditional, ancient, untainted, and never before tainted, which are not being tainted and will not be tainted, not refused by wise ascetics and Brahmins. What 5? Here, a noble disciple, having abandoned the destruction of life, abstains from a destruction of life. By abstaining from the destruction of life, the noble disciple gives to an immeasurable number of beings freedom from fear, hostility, and harm. He himself, in turn, enjoys immeasurable freedom from fear, hostility, and harm. This is the first gift, a great gift, highest of long-standing, traditional, ancient, untainted, and never before tainted, which is not being tainted and will not be tainted, not refused by wise ascetics and Brahmins. This is the fourth stream of merit, stream of the wholesome nutriment of peacefulness, heavenly ripening peacefulness, conducive to heaven, that leads to what is aspired for, needed and agreeable to one's welfare and peacefulness. Again, a noble disciple, having abandoned the taking of what is not given, abstains from taking what is not given, abstains from sexual misconduct, abstains from false speech, abstains from liquor, wine, and intoxicants, substances that cause heedlessness, the basis for heedlessness. By abstaining from liquor, wine, and intoxicants, the basis for heedlessness, the noble disciple gives to an immeasurable number of beings freedom from fear, hostility, and harm. He himself in turn enjoys immeasurable freedom from fear, hostility, and harm. This is the fifth gift, a great gift, highest of long-standing, traditional, ancient, untainted, and never before tainted, which is not being tainted and will not be tainted, not refused by wise ascetics and Brahmins. This is the eighth stream of merit, stream of the wholesome, nutriment of peacefulness, heavenly ripening peacefulness, conducive to heaven. That leads to what is aspired for, needed and agreeable to one's welfare and peacefulness. These monks are the eighth stream of merit, streams of the wholesome, nutriments of peacefulness, heavenly ripening in peacefulness, conducive to heaven, that lead to what is aspired for, needed and agreeable to one's welfare and peacefulness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Yihang. So here the Buddha is talking about how to make wholesome Gama, or this merit, and there's 8 kind of avenues to do that. These aren't the only 8, because remember, you're never interested in looking at the teachings of the Buddha in isolation. There's other things too that the Buddha teaches, but these are 8 things that one would understand is producing wholesome Gama. And you've seen these things before, but now you're just seeing it in a different way that he's describing it. The first 3 are having confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community, that you understand that these things are important. And of course, an individual builds that confidence over time through investigation of the teachings. So those are the first 3 that he's talking about. This is going to help lead to your peacefulness and your welfare, because if you have confidence in the Buddha, you have access to his teachings, and you actually investigate them and study them, then you can actually be part of a community where you're learning not only from the teacher, but from other people in the community too. This is going to help you to build your practice where you can get more and more peacefulness through training the mind, getting closer and closer to enlightenment. So these are the first 3 things that are going to help lead to some wholesome Gama. These aren't the only 3, but they're part of it. Then the next ones, the next 5, which is a total of 8, is practice of the 5 precepts. As you guys have learned, the 5 precepts knocks down a certain amount of unwholesome Gama by choosing to make wise decisions to not do things like killing, stealing, having sexual misconduct, false speech, and then taking substances that cause heedlessness. These are the 5 precepts, and there's a lot more detail, of course, in the 5 precepts themselves. But I really like the way the Buddha words this here, where he talks about each one of these things that you're practicing, that you give an immeasurable number of beings freedom from fear, hostility, and harm. Because that's what we're doing when we're practicing the 5 precepts. Sometimes when people look at the moral conduct that someone like a Buddha teaches, they kind of try to look at it as rules or commandments. And you're never interested in doing that, because that's just going to take your mind away from the real point of understanding what's being practiced. The reason why the 5 precepts are so impactful for you is because by practicing to that level of detail, it's knocking down a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind. Because if you weren't practicing the 5 precepts, there would need to be a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind to be able to not practice those things. But by practicing it, sure, it's moral conduct that you're looking at, but it ultimately comes back to your mind, and what your mind is doing in order to be able to practice those 5 precepts is it's knocking down a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance. And by you choosing to not make those unwise decisions to kill, steal, have sexual misconduct, lie, or take substances that cause heedlessness, you're actually choosing to not cause harm to other beings. That's part of what those 5 precepts are helping you to be able to do. And because of that, you're giving an immeasurable number of beings freedom from fear, hostility, and harm. And because of that, the cause and effect of this is that you get freedom from fear, hostility, and harm. Because when you're out in the world causing harm, you'll lay in bed at night worrying about what you did and what's going to come back to you. And you'll have a certain amount of fear or hostility or harm in your own mind, thinking that people are going to harm you and being worried about that. So because you're giving these beings this immeasurable amount of freedom from fear, hostility, and harm, you yourself enjoy the same thing. Because when you're going to bed at night, knowing that for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you've been practicing something like the 5 precepts, you can be at ease because you know that you haven't caused any harm to other beings. So therefore, no harm's coming back to you as a result. So that's the cause and effect relationship, that whatever you put out, it comes back to you. So we've talked about the 5 precepts in other programs, but I really like to highlight this language that the Buddha is using here because I think it's really key to helping you to understand what it is that you're experiencing as a result of practicing the 5 precepts, that it's not just rules. That's not what the Buddha taught. He's teaching you wise moral conduct that is going to help you eliminate your pollutions. In the cause and effect, or the ripple effect of that, is that it's going to help you to get freedom from fear, hostility, and harm. So the Buddha is saying this is the first gift, a great gift, highest gift of long-standing, traditional, ancient, untainted, and never before tainted. Meaning, like, these are the pure teachings, that this is what's going to lead to this better way of life, which is not being tainted and will not be tainted. And then ultimately he says, not refused by wise ascetics and Brahmins. So people who truly understand the path to enlightenment in the natural law of karma would understand when they see things like the 5 precepts, they would understand like, oh yeah, this is really wise to practice in this way because they understand the wise way of the natural law of karma. So that's what the Buddha is teaching you here, is how to generate wholesome karma in these 8 different ways. And again, it's not the only 8 ways, but it is part of that. And this is ultimately going to lead to your welfare and peacefulness by having confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, the community, and practicing the 5 precepts. This is going to lead to more welfare and peacefulness for you. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. This is chapter 33. All right, I'm not seeing any questions. So now let's go to chapter 34. So someone who would like to read this. Okay, Keely, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. The 3 bases of meritorious activity. There are these 3 bases of meritorious activity generating wholesome karma. What 3? The basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving. The basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior. And the basis of meritorious activity consisting in meditative development. 1. Here, monks. Someone has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving to a limited extent. He has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior to a limited extent, but he has not undertaken the basis of meritorious activity consisting in meditative development. With the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn among humans in an unfavorable condition. 2. Someone else has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving to a middling extent. He has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior to a middling extent. But he has not undertaken the basis of meritorious activity consisting in meditative development. With the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn among humans in a favorable condition. 3. Someone else has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving to a superior extent. He has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior to a superior extent, but he has not undertaken the basis of a meritorious activity consisting in a meditative development. With the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in a companionship with the heavenly beings ruled by the 4 great kings. There, the four great kings who had practiced supremely the basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving and the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior surpassed the heavenly beings ruled by the four great kings in 10 respects. In heavenly lifespan, heavenly beauty, heavenly happiness, heavenly glory, and heavenly authority, and in heavenly forms, sounds, odors, flavors, and physical objects. 4. Someone else has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving to a superior extent. He has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior to a superior extent, but he has not undertaken the basis of meritorious activity consisting in meditative development. With the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in companionship with the Tavimisa heavenly beings. Their saga, ruler of the heavenly beings, who had practiced superiorly the basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving and the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior, surpasses the Tavatimasa heavenly beings in 10 respects. In heavenly lifespan, heavenly beauty, heavenly happiness, heavenly glory, and heavenly authority, and in heavenly forms, sounds, odors, flavors, and physical objects. 5. Someone else has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving to a superior extent. He has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior to a superior extent, but he has not undertaken the basis of meritorious activity consisting in meditative development. With the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in companionship with the Yama heavenly beings. There, the young heavenly being Sayama, who had practiced supremely the basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving and the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior, surpasses the Yama heavenly beings in 10 respects. In heavenly lifespan, heavenly beauty, heavenly happiness, heavenly glory, and heavenly authority, and in heavenly forms, sounds, odors, flavors, and physical objects. 6. Someone else has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving to a superior extent. He has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior to a superior extent, but he has not undertaken the basis of meritorious activity consisting in meditative development. With the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in companionship with the two-sitter heavenly beings. There, the young heavenly beings sent two-sitter, who had practiced superiorly the basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving and the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior, surpasses the two-sitter heavenly beings in 10 respects. In heavenly lifespan, heavenly beauty, heavenly happiness, heavenly glory, and heavenly authority, and in heavenly forms, sounds, odors, flavors, and physical objects. 7. Someone else has practiced the basis of meritorious activities consisting in giving to a superior extent. He has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior to a superior extent, but he had not undertaken the basis of meritorious activity consisting in meditative development. With the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in companionship with the heavenly being who excelled in creation. There, the young heavenly beings, Sunimita, who had practiced superiorly the basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving, and the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior, suppresses the heavenly beings who excelled in creation in 10 respects: in heavenly lifespan, heavenly beauty, heavenly happiness, heavenly glory, and heavenly authority, and in heavenly forms, sounds, odors, flavors, and physical objects. 8. Someone else has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving to a superior extent. He has practiced the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior to a superior extent, but he has not undertaken the basis of meritorious activity consisting in meditative development. With the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in companionship with the heavenly beings who control what is created by others. There, the young heavenly beings was Savita, who had practiced superiorly the basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving, and the basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior, surpasses the heavenly beings who control what is created by others in 10 respects: in heavenly lifespan, heavenly beauty, heavenly happiness, heavenly glory, and heavenly authority, and in heavenly forms, sounds, odors, flavors, and physical objects. These monks are the 3 bases of meritorious activity. That's all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Keely. Whenever I read a really long discourse like this, or in this case, Keely read it, I like to remind myself about just how well honed the Buddha's mind was, because I imagine if we ask Keely, it was probably somewhat challenging to read through this to a certain degree, right? And that's reading it, right? And if you can imagine having this in your mind and speaking this was a high level of concentration and focus for the Buddha to be able to speak this type of discourse. And this is not the longest discourse by any stretch of the imagination. There's discourses that are much longer than this. And this shows you how well honed his mind was to have focus, concentration, and clarity to be able to speak these things. But nonetheless, what he's speaking about here is what you've been taught as the way of practice. He's not referring to it that way here, but he does in other parts of his teachings. If any of you guys remember what the way of practice is, these are 3 things that you can be doing on a daily basis to be able to move your mind closer to enlightenment. It's practicing generosity, improving your moral conduct, and practicing meditation. I teach this in the foundational programs. Those are the 3 things that the Buddha suggests that you focus on daily. It's important that you look at the frequency of these things, not the amount, but the frequency, because we talked about in a previous discourse how giving is not the amount that you give, it's the consistency and the frequency that you give. That's what the Buddha is teaching you to do. And then also finding someone that is either enlightened or very close to it. That's what's going to help you. Then you like to be consistent where you're improving your moral conduct, because as long as you're spewing harmful moral conduct into the world, this is all just coming back to you. It's like a pipe has bursted and there's oil spewing all over the world. You're not going to go clean up the mess on the floor first. You're going to shut down the oil pipe. So the Buddha would teach his students right view, the Four Noble Truths, but then he would immediately start teaching them about moral conduct and how to improve that so that they're no longer continuing to put harm into the world, because that's all harm that's going to be coming back to them. And then, of course, there's the meditation as well, consistently developing your meditation practice. These are the 3 things that you would be wise to be developing every single day, is practicing generosity multiple times throughout your day, practicing to improve your moral conduct, and practicing your meditation. This is what's going to help you to make your way to enlightenment. But now he's talking about these beings that are being reborn, right? And we don't necessarily need to go into each individual rebirth, but you understand what he's sharing here is that for someone who's practicing just a limited amount of generosity and a limited amount of improving their moral conduct, but they're not practicing meditation, there's going to be this certain amount of rebirth where there's an unfavorable condition that one is going to be reborn into the human realm. But then for someone who's practicing these 3 things to a middling extent, and then of course not practicing meditation, just like up here, this individual, because they're now improved their practice, they're going to now be reborn among human beings in a favorable condition, right? And then the Buddha's going through this. And the reason why is because each one of these types of beings, their pollution is reducing more and more and more and more. And that's why there's these different rebirths that one is experiencing. So the way that you gain benefit from a discourse like this is, of course, you're interested in developing your generosity to a superior extent. You're interested in developing your virtuous behavior and your moral conduct to a superior extent. And you're interested in developing your meditation to a superior extent. The Buddha doesn't go into that detail with that type of individual, but that type of individual gets to enlightenment. That's what that individual does. There's not any rebirth. That's why the Buddha is not talking about that here, because he's talking about rebirth. So if you can develop your generosity, moral conduct, and meditation, you're making your way to enlightenment. And if you can do all three of those things to a superior extent, now you're really reducing and significantly eliminating the pollutions in the mind, which is ultimately producing the discontentedness. So that's what you would like to be able to do. And while we talk about it as here using the words limited, middling, or superior, you never interested in thinking about it as like a hierarchy or like a pecking order within your own mind. Like you're not going to come into the community of practitioners that you're part of and have your chest all poked out and a chip on your shoulder that you're practicing generosity to a superior extent, or your virtuous behavior is to a superior extent, or that your meditation is a superior extent. And we're just using those words to be able to help you understand the graduating, increasing amount of practice of these three things. So let me know if you guys have any questions on the three bases of this meritorious activity, which is essentially the way of practice, these three individual things that you would like to be doing on a daily basis in order to move your practice forward and get closer to enlightenment. So it looks like Vibhav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, David. I had a question on the 3 to 8.
Okay, right here.
So they're all basically saying that the meritorious activity is practiced to a superior extent, and then virtuous behavior is practiced to a superior extent, and then the meditative development is not practiced. But then it's categorized into being born into different heavenly beings, which are in different pecking orders, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just trying to wonder. I was wondering why that is the case, where they're all practicing merit and practicing virtual behavior, but not doing the meditative development. But then they're being born into different heavenly beings.
Yeah, there's other aspects here that we're not looking at and that we're not seeing because it's not described in the discourse. But these aren't exactly the same. Maybe what's happening is one being is practicing for a longer period. That could be one aspect of it. There could be other things that the individuals have developed as part of their mind. Here, because we're just talking about these three individual categories of generosity, virtuous behavior, and meditation, we're just seeing three categories, but there's other things as well, the level of pollution in the mind. So there is going to be uniquenesses between these types of individuals. Otherwise, they wouldn't be reborn in different places. And one of the criteria is that practicing it for a more extended period of time is going to give the mind more time to reduce its pollution. So that would be one aspect of it, but there can be others as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere, so we'll go to this next chapter. This is chapter 35, and it looks like, Vibhav, your hand's still up. Are you interested in reading? And Pat's got his hand up as well.
I can read it.
Okay, we'll go to Pat next then.
A heavenly being's curiosity. A heavenly being. Giving what does one give strength? Giving what does one give beauty? Giving what does one give ease? Giving what does one give sight? Who is the giver of all? Being asked, please explain to me. The perfectly enlightened one. Giving food, one gives strength. Giving clothes, one gives beauty. Giving a vehicle, one gives ease. Giving a lamp, one gives sight. The one who gives a residence is the giver of all. But the one who teaches the teachings is the giver of deathless enlightenment. A heavenly being. For whom does merit always increase, both by day and by night? Who are the people going to heaven? Established in the teachings, endowed with virtue, moral conduct. The perfectly enlightened one. Those who set a park or a grove, the people who construct a bridge, a place to drink and a well, those who give a residence. For them merit always increases, both by day and by night. Those are the people going to heaven, established in the teachings, endowed with virtue, moral conduct. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vibhav. So it's important when you see teachings like this that you don't think that there's somehow someone's going to kind of quote unquote buy their way into heaven. That's not what the Buddha is teaching here. He's just helping you to see the cause and effect relationship between generosity, and as you're practicing generosity, that's reducing the pollution in the mind. And as you're reducing the pollution in the mind, it's going to lead to a potential rebirth in the heavenly realm. And as you guys know, that's not the ultimate goal. That's not what you're interested in. You're interested in getting to enlightenment. So here, the Buddha was asked by this heavenly being of, what is it that gives strength, beauty, ease, sight, and the giver of all? And the Buddha is giving those examples: food, clothing, vehicles, lamps. The one who gives a residence is the giver of all, but the one who teaches the teachings, that's the giver of the deathless element. That's what is sometimes referred to as enlightenment, because once someone gets to enlightenment, we say that this individual no longer dies. They're just experiencing final enlightenment. So the Buddha sometimes refers to enlightenment as the deathless or the deathless element. So then this individual says, okay, for whom does merit always increase, both day and by night, right? Who are the people going to heaven, established in the teachings, endowed with virtue, which is moral conduct? Well, the Buddha is giving examples of that. And here's the reason why these lead to this. So he's talking about setting up a park or a grove, constructing a bridge, a place to drink, like a well, and giving a residence. That's where merit is continuing to increase. The reason why is because these are congregating places. This is where people come to congregate. And now if that's what you're giving in order to benefit the community, then now you have the ability to be able to glean insight and understanding of the teachings more so than just someone who's, say, for example, giving food on one occasion. Right? So it's not like, wow, you spend all this money to set up a park or a grove, and now you're buying your way into the heavenly realm. No, that's not what it is at all. Instead, it's that if you set up a park or a grove, now the ordained practitioners that we're learning with the Buddha are going to come and hang out there. And maybe you set up this park close by your house, and now you can go there in order to be able to get information about how to get to enlightenment, because these individuals were spread out all over the place, and they're going to congregate in certain places like a park or a grove. As an individual constructs a bridge, you're going to know where these people are going to be crossing because they're going to be walking back and forth. A place to drink water, people are going to congregate there. And also a residence. If you give a residence to ordained practitioners, they're going to congregate there. They're going to need a place to stay. And now you know where to go in order to find the teachings, because these individuals weren't tied down to just one temple. Like today, we have monks that are stationed at a particular temple. And if you're interested in seeing that person, you just pretty much know that they're at that temple and that's where they hang out and that's where they stay. Where that wasn't the case during the lifetime of the Buddha. These individuals were roaming around all over the place, and they were maybe staying in a village for 3, 4, 5 months, helping the villagers of that particular village learn the teachings. So by setting up these types of things, it provides you the ability to now go understand the teachings and learn them very closely. And that's why these individuals are established in the teachings, and that's why they're endowed with virtue or moral conduct, because they had the opportunity to cultivate the wisdom through the type of generosity that they're sharing, which is places where ordained practitioners and teachers would be able to congregate, and then they would be able to get access to the teachings more easily. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So now, Pat, looks like you're next. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. People who generate much merit, wholesome karma, monks. Whenever virtuous monastics come to a home, people there generate much merit on 5 grounds. What 5? 1, When people see virtuous monastics come to their home and they arouse hearts and confidence toward them, on that occasion, that family is practicing the way conducive to heaven. 2. When people rise, pay homage, and offer a seat to virtuous monastics who come to their home, on that occasion, that family is practicing the way conducive to birth in high families. 3. When people remove the stain of selfishness toward virtuous monastics who come to their home, on that occasion, that family is practicing the way conducive to great influence. 4. When, according to their means, people share what they have with virtuous monastics who come to their home, on that occasion, that family is practicing the way conducive to great wealth. 5. When people question virtuous monastics who come to their home, make inquiries about the teachings, and listen to the teachings on that occasion, that family is practicing the way conducive to great wisdom. Monks, whenever virtuous monastics come to a home, the people there generate much merit on these 5 grounds. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. So here the Buddha is helping household practitioners to understand what would be wise in terms of the way that they interact with ordained practitioners, because that's the primary way that people would learn during the lifetime of the Buddha. Is first, there would be ordained practitioners that would learn from the Buddha. And then the Buddha and the ordained practitioners were then teaching household practitioners. And it was household practitioners that were practicing all of this various teachings, like practicing generosity to support the community. So the ordained practitioners, they were practicing generosity too, to be able to spend time sharing the teachings. But then as a result, the household practitioners were practicing generosity towards the teachers. This is the mutual support that the Buddha instituted from during his lifetime. And he's showing you how by practicing in a certain way that it's leading to certain results. Once again, he's showing you this cause and effect, this natural law of karma. And of course, here, this first one, he's talking about how practicing this particular aspect is now conducive to heaven. And that's not what it is that your actual goal is, but because household practitioners were frequently having lots of activity towards sustaining their life, they didn't necessarily get to enlightenment so frequently. They still did. In last class, you were able to see that discourse where the Buddha was talking about that to a certain degree. But by and large, the household practitioners were just trying to get to a better rebirth. It was the ordained practitioners that were mostly getting to enlightenment, that there was countless people in the ordained path that got to enlightenment, where there was definitely household practitioners too, but just not as many because they had so many obstacles to just sustain their life. So oftentimes they were just focused on maybe getting to heaven and then maybe getting to enlightenment from there, or maybe getting to an improved rebirth in their next human life or something of that nature. So the Buddha is showing you this cause and effect of each thing that you're doing that's leading to any particular way of experiencing in your rebirth of how you'll experience that based on things that you're doing in this life. But ultimately, these same things is what actually leads to enlightenment too. So for example, when people see virtuous monastics come to their home and they arouse hearts of confidence towards them, right? So the Buddha is saying, okay, this is conducive to heaven, but you know what? It's also conducive to enlightenment too. Because in order to have virtuous monastics come to your home, you're going to need to know what it means to be virtuous, because there's tons of ordained practitioners in the world. And you would like to, if you're going to have a relationship with any of them, understand how to discern what is wise and unwise, what is virtuous and what is not, so that if you're inviting people into your home, that you invite virtuous practitioners to be able to come and guide you and teach you. And if you have confidence towards them, then that means that now you have the confidence to learn and grow and develop through talking with them and gaining insight and understanding about the teachings. Then the next one is when people rise, pay homage or respect, and offer a seat to a virtuous monastic who comes to their home. On this occasion, it's conducive to birth in high families. That's in the next rebirth. But this also produces enlightenment too, because by practicing respect towards others and respecting people, this is going to help you to attain enlightenment as well. Removing the stain of selfishness, same thing. Sure, the Buddha is saying that it's conducive to great influence in your next rebirth, but it's conducive to your enlightenment in this life as well. And the same thing with these others. According to their means, people share what they have with virtuous monastics. That's practicing generosity. And then when people question virtuous monastics who come to their home, that means that you're not only listening to the teachings, but you're actually asking questions too. That's helpful as well. And that's conducive to great wisdom. That's what's ultimately going to lead to enlightenment, is that you don't just sit back and just listen, but you actually are actively listening. You're eagerly listening to the teachings. And then where you need to, you ask questions to be able to get help. This is what's ultimately going to lead to wholesome karma in you actually making your way to enlightenment. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter, chapter 36. Okay, I don't see any questions, so we'll go to chapter 37. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Yihang. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. Having fulfilled and not having fulfilled one's duty towards the ascetics, ordained practitioners. Monks, last night, when the night had advanced, a number of heavenly beings of stunning beauty illuminating the entire Jeta's grove, approached me, paid homage to me, and stood to one side. Those heavenly beings then said, "In the past, Venerable Sir, when we were human beings, monks approached our homes. We rose up for them, but did not pay homage to them, not having fulfilled our duty full of regret and remorse. We were reborn in an inferior class of heavenly beings. Some other heavenly beings approached me and said, "In the past, Venerable Sir, when we were human beings, monks approached our homes. We rose up for them and paid homage to them, but we did not offer them seats, not having fulfilled our duty, full of regret and remorse. We were reborn in an inferior class of heavenly beings." Some other heavenly beings approached me and said, "In the past, Venerable Sir, when we were human beings, monks approached our homes. We rose up for them, paid homage to them, and offered them seats, but we did not share things with them to the best of our ability and capacity. We shared things with them to the best of our ability and capacity, but we did not sit close by to listen to the teachings. We sat close by to listen to the teachings, but we did not listen to it with eager ears. We listened to it with eager ears, but having heard it, we did not retain the teachings in mind. Having heard it, we retained the teachings in mind, but we did not examine the meaning of the teachings that had been retained in mind. We examined the meaning of the teachings that had been retained in mind, but we did not understand the meaning of the teachings, and then practice in accordance with the teachings. Not having fulfilled our duty, full of regret and remorse, we were reborn in an inferior class of heavenly beings. Some other heavenly beings approached me and said, "In the past, Venerable Sir, when we were human beings, monks approached our homes. We rose up for them, paid homage to them, offered them seats, and shared things with them to the best of our ability and capacity. We sat close by to listen to the teachings and listened to it with eager ears. Having heard it, we retained the teachings in mind. We examined the meaning of the teachings that had been retained in mind, and we understood the meanings of the teachings, and then practiced in accordance with the teachings. Having fulfilled our duty free of regret and remorse, we were reborn in a superior class of heavenly beings. These are the feet of trees, monks. These are empty huts. Meditate, monks. Do not be complacent. Do not have cause to regret it later, like those prior heavenly beings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Yihang. So I think this discourse is pretty self-explanatory, especially since we just talked about the previous one, which this one is kind of an elaboration of that one, right? Helping you to be able to see the various types of merit that one could practice in accordance with ordained practitioners and what it leads to. And of course, here, this is talking about being reborn in the heavenly realm, but that's not what one would ultimately aspire for. So let me know what questions you guys have on this. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I'll just see if you guys have any questions. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So now let's go to the next chapter, chapter 38. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Robert, go ahead, sir.
Offerings that are not worth even a fraction. Whatever woman, much joyful, endowed with virtue, moral conduct, a disciple of the welfarer, food and drink, gives, having overcome material gain, the gift that is heavenly, dispelling sorrow, bringing peacefulness, and she gains a heavenly being, lifespan owing to the spotless, stainless way. She, aspiring merit, at ease, healthy, joyful, long, in a heavenly company. If one practices the teachings, though getting on by gathering, if while one supports one's wife, one gives from the little one has, then 100,000 offerings of those who sacrifice 1,000 are not worth even a fraction of the gift of one like him. Since they give while settled in unrighteousness, having slain and killed, causing sorrow, their offering, tearful, a result of violence, shares not the value of the righteous one's gift. That is why 100,000 offerings of those who sacrifice 1,000 are not worth even a fraction of the gift of one like him.
Okay, thank you, Robert. So one of the things that you're going to see that the Buddha teaches about making offerings and practicing generosity is he teaches you to make offerings without causing harm to other beings or without causing harm to yourself. So, for example, if someone went out and stole something and then they offered it to some monks as a offering or a teacher or something like this, they've caused harm in order to be able to make that offering. And that's not beneficial because they're producing unwholesome karma over here, and now they're producing wholesome karma over here because they're giving it away. This doesn't negate itself, right? If you stole a car and you gave it to a temple to use for the monks, you're still going to jail. That's the unwholesome karma, right? It's not like the police are going to be like, oh, okay, you gave it away, so we're not going to take you to jail. Like, no, you still caused harm, and this harm is going to come back to you, right? So that's what the Buddha is helping you to be able to see here. And he's saying it in kind of a little bit more of a poetic form, but there's a place where he says it very clearly that he talks about not causing harm to others or to yourself. And that's practicing generosity from the middle way, that if you are going to cause harm to yourself with practicing generosity, that means you're overextending yourself, that you don't have the resources that you need in order to be able to give, and you haven't really thought through your gift, right? But if you're on the other side where you're selfish, that's not where you're interested to be either. So you would like to be able to practice generosity where you're not causing harm to yourself or any other beings. And this is just more of a poetic way of being able to say that. So do you guys have any questions on this particular chapter? Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So now let's go to the next one. This is chapter 39. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, got two people here. We got Vibhav, and then I guess Pat will take the last one and close it out for us.
Gifts of an unwholesome person and wholesome person. Monks, there are these 5 gifts of an unwholesome person. What 5? He gives carelessly. He gives without deep respect. He does not give with his own hand. He gives what would be discarded. He gives without a view about the results of giving. These are 5 gifts of an unwholesome person. Monks, there are these 5 gifts of a wholesome person. What 5? He gives carefully. He gives with deep appreciation and gratitude. He gives with his own hand. He gives that would not be discarded. He gives with a view about the results of giving. These are the 5 gifts of a wholesome person. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Vibhav. So here, these are two opposites of each other, so I can just focus on one, and I'm teaching you the other one as well. So let's focus on, what it means to practice generosity in a wholesome way. We've already talked about some of these, particularly since we're deeper into this book. giving carefully is to make sure you think through any particular gift that you're going to be giving, right? That you aren't overextending yourself, but you're also not being selfish and stingy either. That you practice generosity from the middle way, where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. Then, as you're making a gift, it's always wise to have deep appreciation and gratitude towards others, right? As you're making this gift, if we're talking about ordained practitioners, or even making offerings to your parents or your siblings or your life partner or anybody, you would like to have appreciation and gratitude as you're making that gift. Also, giving with your own hand helps you to eliminate any kind of a craving, desire, attachment. Like if you just said to your wife or to your husband or to your friend, like, oh yeah, can you get that, money off of the counter and give it to that person? Or, oh, can you get that fruit at the market and give it to that person? And I'll pay you back for it, but can you do that for me? You're not actually training your mind to let go, right? By you actually choosing to give with your own hand, it actually is a real great action for your mind, because that's ultimately what you're doing, is training your mind to let go. So you can give with your own hand, which is going to be much more beneficial for you. In fact, if you're working on letting go of a craving, you might even actually gesture with your hands to be able to help your mind to be able to let go, right? But the practice of generosity, where you're giving with your own hand, is going to help your mind to let go. It'll help you eliminate the underlying cause that's producing discontent feelings. Then you're giving things that aren't necessarily going to be discarded. As we talked earlier with Vibhav's question, if you have old clothes and old shoes and bats and balls and tennis rackets and things like this that you're looking to clean out your house and give it to somebody who could actually benefit from it, there's no harm in doing that. That's actually helpful for your mind to kind of let those things go. But also, that's not the only generosity that you would like to practice. If you're only purchasing things for yourself, using those and then giving it away, and that's the only type of generosity that you practice, that would be unwise, because it's not fully practicing pure generosity. You would, in some cases, like to go to the store and buy that fruit, and you haven't eaten it and you're not planning to eat it, and it's still good quality fruit, and you're giving it to somebody to be able to eat. And other gifts like this too, right? So you would like to be sure that you're practicing in that way. And then that you understand the results of giving. That's that you understand how it enhances the quality of your mind, and that it's helping you eliminate craving, desire, attachment. If you don't understand why you're practicing generosity, it would be very difficult for it to really have a significant effect, right? If you gave without knowing this, it still helps you, but it's just not as the same as if you understand why you're giving, because it's enhancing the quality of your mind. That's the results of giving. And you would like to be able to keep that in mind. And having accomplished generosity with these 5 things in mind, this is what the Buddha is talking about as a wholesome person giving gifts. And there's other guidance that you're learning in this book about generosity and how to practice it, but this is just 5 things that he's talking about here in this discourse. And again, in the previous part, we have the opposite side of this too, which is not something that you would like to practice. But if you're currently practicing any of these things, you can transform it into this wholesome qualities that you can see here. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Gifts of an unwholesome person and of a wholesome person. Okay, I don't see any questions. So now, Pat, if you'd like to close us out with this one here, chapter 40.
Gifts of a wholesome person. First discourse. Monks, there are these 8 gifts of a wholesome person. What 8? He gives what is pure. He gives what is excellent. He gives a timely gift. He gives what is allowable. He gives after investigation. He gives often. While giving, he settled his mind in confidence, and having given, he is joyful. These are the 8 gifts of a wholesome person. He gives what is pure and excellent, allowable drinks and food at the proper time. He gives gifts often to fruitful fields of merit to those who lead the spiritual life. He does not feel regret, having giving away many material things. Those with deep wisdom praise the gifts given in this way. Having thus practiced charity with mind freely generous, one intelligent and wise, rich in confidence, is reborn in a pleasant, untroubled world, heavenly realm. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. So here, this is really straightforward, particularly since we've been talking through a number of these things. Last week, I think it was, we talked about giving a timely gift. I think you can figure out what pure and excellent is, right? Like a really nice gift. Giving what is allowable. This takes us back to, if you were going to give, alcohol or something like that to an ordained practitioner or a teacher who's practicing the teachings really closely, that would not be wise, right? You would like to be able to, give things that are that this person can use. That during the lifetime of the Buddha, he didn't accept currency, he didn't accept land, he didn't accept animals, he didn't accept slaves. Sometimes people would offer him women or children. He didn't accept any of these kinds of things like living beings. So nowadays we can understand things that would be allowable in terms of that would be wise to give, right? The word allowable is being used here, but we could think about this as wise. Giving after investigation. This is after you know somebody and you understand an individual. You would like to then be able to give things that are going to be useful for that individual, that you would like to investigate what is really needed here, right? Like maybe you go to a temple or you talk to a teacher and say, hey, what do you really need? What could you really use in this situation? Maybe you're planning to make a gift and you're trying to get some ideas of what could be usable and helpful to the community. That's what it means to investigate. Then giving often, the Buddha teaches to give frequently. You can see this in other teachings too, that he talks about a daily practice of giving, because your mind needs that throughout your weeks, throughout your months, and throughout your years to be able to give. This is going to help your mind to let go. And remember, you're sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources so that way your mind can be more easily to let go of its cravings, desires, attachments. While you're giving, you would like to have your mind settled in calmness and confidence, right? Because if you haven't really thought through your gift and you're haphazardly making an offering, your mind will be all shaken up and you'll lack confidence of whether or not this is actually a good gift to be able to give. But if you thought through your offering and you've done the prior things that the Buddha is talking about here, then you'll have confidence and calmness in your mind when you're actually giving, because you know that you've fully investigated this and looked at this closely. And then you'll also have joy in the mind, where there won't be any remorse or regret as part of your offering. The Buddha talks about that further down here. But he teaches you to get to the point where when you're making an offering, that you're joyful before giving, that your mind is calm and confident in the act of giving, and then you're joyful after giving as well. And that's to make sure that you don't have any regret or remorse that you've given away certain types of things. And this is ultimately what's going to help you to be able to train your mind to eliminate the craving, desire, attachment in the mind. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. This is chapter 40, Gifts of a Wholesome Person. Okay. Looks like Robert has a question. Go ahead, sir.
I just want to confirm, it feels like number 8 is also like not giving away too much of yourself or something, like you've overgiven and now you don't have enough yourself. That's sort of the staying joyful.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because if you give too much, when you get to the end of your offering, you'll feel like, oh my goodness, I give so much. I'm not able to eat myself, or I can't pay my rent, or, oh my gosh, I don't have what I need. But also if you get on the other side of that, where you're like, oh, I was so selfish and stingy. Why didn't I give more? I could have spent more time helping those orphans, or I could have spent more time, cleaning up my neighbor's yard. I left in the middle of that. You'll feel regret and remorse that you didn't give enough. So by being joyful, it ensures that you're in the middle, that you're not extending yourself where you don't have what you need, but also you're not feeling this regret and remorse either. Okay, looks like that might be all the questions. Let me just check one more time. Okay, so I don't see any other questions. So I'll just end by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and grow and develop on the path. Next week, we're going to be in the next 10 chapters, chapters 41 through 50. we're really on the home stretch here. You know, we've only got maybe like 4 or 5 more weeks of actually studying these teachings, and we're going to be back at volume 2. For those of you guys that would like to restart the Pali Canon and English study group on the 10th of June, we're going to be restarting from the very beginning. So you guys are more than welcome to start from the beginning if you like. And it's a year and a half to learn all of those discourses. And if you've learned it once, it really is helpful to refresh your memory and really soak it in to learn it again. But that's what we're going to be doing. And remember, you can learn in the live classes or the recordings as well. Those are all options for you. So tomorrow in our group learning program, we're going to be in chapter 22 of our first book, which is titled Mental Health, a Modern Day Delusion. This is where I help students to be able to understand what is really at the core of things like PTSD, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, ADD, ADHD, bulimia, anorexia. All these different things can actually be resolved through training of the mind through the teachings of the Buddha. But nowadays, people are misunderstanding this, and they don't really understand that that's the case. A lot of times people think that this is a biological defect of the brain or a disorder. And while the anguish that people experience is really true and real, the underlying cause is not brain chemistry. And you'll be able to see this as part of tomorrow's class if you would like to attend and you haven't attended that yet. And then on next week, Monday through Friday, I'm going to be teaching the Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment course, which is what I teach every first week of the month. So there's that's going to be happening. And there's all kinds of other events and things like that. I just recently sent out an email so that you guys would be aware of all the different things that are coming up, because we've got a lot of learning opportunities coming up. So thank you all for reading. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for participating in the class, even by just attending. That's wonderful to have you guys learning and growing on the path. As you need help, feel free to reach out. I'm here to help you. You can ask questions in classes. You can send me a private message. You can post on our Facebook group, or you can schedule personal guidance. So take care and be well. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.